Now we'll take a deep dive into how AssetAccountant works with Sage Intacct to fully manage the accounting for leases. There are two types of leases we'll look at. One, an asset acquired using finance arrangements, being an asset finance lease. Two, a right-of-use asset.
The first thing I will do in this demonstration is to create a new asset in Intacct that I can attach the finance arrangements to. I'll do this as the same way as entering a new asset. I'll just call this my finance asset as I create this journal and post that to the asset clearing account as before. Let's just say the cost of that I want to capitalize is $100,000, and I'm going to post the other side to accounts payable. So I'll submit that asset in Intacct. Once the journal has been posted in Intacct, I can move across to AssetAccountant. And if I refresh the draft asset section, what you will see here is AssetAccountant will bring through my finance asset. I'm just going to add that asset here, and let's say it's computer equipment. As previously, I can also set the method for the tax depreciation and the book depreciation here. So for these purposes, I'll just leave those as per the defaults. Then I'm going to move into the assets section of the system. Here you'll see the assets been added to the register. So if I open up the computer equipment group, you can see there's $100,000 that's been added for my finance asset. I'll go into this screen. If you'd like more detail on everything else in this screen, there are other videos available on our website at asset.accountant. For these purposes here, all I'm going to do is add a financing arrangement or a lease here, and you can choose the type that you want to add. So in this case here, it's an asset finance arrangement. And then I will just generate the schedule for the asset. So I do that by clicking here. And in this case here, I'm going to finance the $100,000. And let's say the payment profile for this is $10,000 as a deposit on day one, and then $2,000 a month for 36 months, followed by a final balloon payment of, let's say, $25,000 as a one-off payment. So once you've entered that information, you can also enter an interest rate. If you have one, AssetAccountant will calculate the split between principal payment and interest on each of those amounts over the life of the lease. If you do enter an interest rate, we will try and match as close as possible using one of a number of different ways that we use to calculate the method. Once that's done, you can choose use the schedule, and again, just review that and then save that information. What you will see now is that this asset screen now has 3 additional columns, which show initially the liability that's outstanding, in this case of $100,000, followed by the payments that are made, and then the interest that is accrued either each month or on the date of each payment. And that's then netted off down here. So you can follow the reduction of the financed amount over the life of that particular contract that you have. Once you've done that, AssetAccountant will also create the journals for that particular asset. So you can see here I've created a journal already to November the 30th. The way the journals work in AssetAccountant, when you create a new journal, it will just show you the changes since the last one. So if I create a second journal now to the 30th of November, that will just show me the impact of adding that asset and the lease that I've put in here. So here you can see under the computer equipment group, at the bottom here, we've added a cost amount to the asset section of the balance sheet. So that $100,000 has started to be depreciated. And you can see the depreciation that's charged for November. And then we've also set up a lease liability on the balance sheet. There's a number of ways you can do that. You can set that up as current or non-current, and you can also disclose the gross liability net of the unexpired interest or the interest that's yet to accrue if you want full disclosure, or you can map all of those to the same account if you just want to have a single liability of the principal outstanding. The journals will also post an amount to the lease payment clearing account each month so that you have an entry to reconcile against your bank feed. And it will also look forward 12 months and make any adjustments for payments that are made in 12 months that weren't previously. So we do the movement from the non-current to the current liabilities. And then once you're happy with that, you can post that to Sage as with the other journals that we create. If I go back into the asset now, there are a number of things you can do here to the asset. So you can remove the lease or the finance arrangements if you need to. You can refinance or terminate the lease, and you can also generate the lease schedule report. So if I show the lease schedule report, that is a detail of information that's a full set of data that you might need to send to, for example, auditors in connection with that lease for them to recreate the entries as part of their audit work. If you want to refinance the lease at any point, you can just choose the date you want to refinance. So in 12 months' time, for example, this is what we've calculated the refinanced amount is. You can change that if you need to, and then you can refinance from there. And again, AssetAccountant will calculate all the journals for you if needed. There are also a number of reports that are available in addition to the asset reports you can see here. There is a section of lease reports. I won't go through all of these in the interest of time, but there are various reports available, including the amounts you're paying over a 12-month period, the balances that you have with your leases, and you can split that out by financier if you need, so you can always see what the future liability that you have outstanding with any particular financier at a month or a point in time is over the course of the following 12 months. Then the final thing we will look at in here is the lease summary report, which is a detailed breakdown of lease information generated as at a certain date in time. Again, you can see here for each of the asset groups that you've got, you can see the principal that's outstanding, any interest that you've got accrued, split by current and non-current and so on. So these reports are very useful for disclosure purposes. So that's looking at a lease or a finance arrangement where you've acquired an asset. The other kind of lease, of course, you can create is a right of use asset. So AssetAccountant also supports those. So let's just say I'm going to create my right of use building here. So I'll select that in buildings and then the right of use asset, and then you just choose the start date. And then as with the asset finance arrangements, you create the schedule. The difference with a right of use asset, of course, is you put in an interest rate. You can also add adjustments. So if you have those included or you know the CPI adjustment you like to estimate, you can put that in there. And then here you can put in the lease payment. So let's say we're paying $5,000 a month for 5 years. As with the other types of leases or finance arrangements, AssetAccountant will review each payment and assign an amount of interest to that payment based on the life of the lease and the interest rate. And then if you're happy with that, you can use that schedule. Finally, at the bottom of the screen here, this will ask you to choose the method. So for tax, we would say that doesn't exist. And then for accounts, if this is a finance lease under ASC 842, you can just use straight line, and that will use the depreciation method to depreciate to the end of the lease. If it's an operating lease, then you can just choose the operating lease method, and that will use that separate method for the purposes of the depreciation calculations or the rental write-off. So once you've done that, you can save that. As with the other types of assets in the system, you can see the right of use asset has been created here. And then we have a lease liability that's outstanding at any point in time. And that's managed over the life of that lease with the payments reducing it and interest accrual and so on. The other thing you can do in here is add a make good provision. So if you need to add a make good provision at the start of that contract, then you can just say this is the life of it. And let's say I want $10,000 provision the end. You can also add an inflation rate there if you need to. So if that provision is calculated at today's value, then that will give you the inflation rate. And you can then discount it as well. So typically these numbers would be the same if you do use an inflation rate, but just for illustrative purposes there, I've used different numbers. But let me remove that inflation rate here, and that would just show you the discount that you would start with and then the unwinding of the discount over the life of the lease. So if I just add that make good provision, you'll see here in the asset section of the screen, the make good provision's been added. And that's now increased the value of the asset, and that will depreciate over the life of this contract. And you can see each month a journal is created where there will be an adjustment to the make good provision and the unwinding of the discount is charged to the P&L. As with the asset finance leases, we also create the journals for these, of course. So if I just create a further journal to the end of November, this will only show the movement in the right of use asset now that I've just created. So that's now created, and then I can go into this journal, and you can see here that there are the entries also for the make good provision that will be posted to Intacct in the fullness of time. You can modify right of use assets as well. So if you need to change the contract details, you can do that. AssetAccountant will also adjust the value of the asset if you choose. And there's a number of reports that are available as well. The right of use movements report, I'll just highlight that one, which shows the overall summary of your right of use leases. So you can see here, if I click into this, the right of use building that I've set up is the first entry in here. And you can see this has got the additions shown in the period to the lease liability, the interest charges, the payments that are made, and then the closing balance as at the closing date of this report. And then it's also got the same information for the asset over on the right-hand side where you can see additions, depreciation, and so on. So this is a really useful report to give to auditors if you need to do that so that they can check the balances you are disclosing in relation to right of use assets. So this video has shown you how to set up a new asset in AssetAccountant and attach a finance arrangement to it. We looked at how you do that by pulling the asset through from Intacct and then attaching the payment schedule to that particular asset, creating the journal and sending it back to Intacct, as well as reviewing some of the reports that are available. We also added a right of use asset and looked at how you can create those within the system, modify those, and finally run some of the reports and journal that information back to Sage Intacct. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like further detail on any of the aspects that we covered in this high-level video, please visit our website at www.asset.accountant, where more detailed videos are available.